Are you gonna film it?
Nova's co-hosting.
You gonna film it? You wanna film the YouTube video?
You gonna co-host?
You can't.
On today's panel.
All right, tell them what this book is about. You'll have to excuse my appearance. Obviously, I have been at work all day, but I have secured the books. So we're gonna do a really quick book haul. Some of these I set out to purchase. Some of these I've heard good things about and kept them in my cart for a while. Some of these I saw on a blind buy and was like, yeah, I'm gonna get that. Starting out with the one that I think I'm probably the most excited about. I'll kind of go into why, but it's Wild and Distant Seas. This is a story that it starts along the storyline of Moby Dick. It follows a woman and her husband, and they run an inn, and from what I can tell, it's kind of failing. Time frame for this I think is late 1800s, but essentially they have a gentleman come to them. His name is Ishmael, and her husband and him leave on this quest to essentially, or what I'm assuming is the plotline of Moby Dick, or something of the like. But this is more than that. So it takes off from that point, and all of the decisions of our main character and how it shapes the lives and choices of other people down like the lineage and other women in history. Really, really excited to read this one. Like I said, this was more of a blind buy. This was one that I had in my cart because Barnes & Noble has been highly recommending it, and it just seemed like I've been wanting more just general fiction. And this seems like a little bit of general fiction, a little bit of historical fiction at the same time, because obviously in the sense of Moby Dick already exists as a book, we're compounding on that story. So really, really excited to read this one. Don't know too much about it, but it seems pretty short and like just a good solid fiction read. And following kind of the same vibes, this is, if you guys know anything about me, I love a tale of sisters. I love a tale of like the impacts of decisions that characters make, which is obviously in Wild and Distant Seas as well. But the last book by this author I absolutely loved, and I saw this beautiful edition just on the Barnes & Noble website as a recent release. I was like, look, I loved Wayward. I know I'm gonna love this one, and so far Amelia Hart can do no wrong, and it is The Sirens. I got the, you know, sprayed edges one. I'm so excited to read this. So obviously we have two sisters at the beginning of the novel. One sister wakes up with her like hands around her like ex-boyfriend's throat. I don't know if he died or like what happened, but then she goes to find her sister. Her sister isn't around. I don't know if they like live separately or what, but she goes to find her sister, can't find her sister, and decides to read like her sister's journal from when she was younger, basically as comfort. And she starts kind of explore that story. And then it also has a portion where we're jumping back into, I believe, around the 1800s, and it's stories of sirens and children going missing and men winding up dead. And it follows two girls who are sent from wherever they live to Australia when Australia was one of the like prison, you know, back when it used to be like a prison essentially. So I think that's really cool. I love multiple POVs, so I'm really excited to see how Amelia kind of blends those two stories together. Like we have very modern day, and then we have obviously in the past, and I'm just really excited. And there's just something about her books that are so poetic and so beautiful, and if you haven't read Wayward, you absolutely should. I'm just so excited to read this. Amelia has rapidly become one of my favorite authors because what she writes, especially in Wayward, was just very poetic and like haunting at the same time, and it has this sort of like feminist vibe to it. I'm just really excited to read this one. The one that I'm the most excited to read though, and I have a very specific reason for this. I'm not super versed in this author's works, which will probably be a little alarming to a few people, but it's The Listeners by Maggie Stiefvater. The reason why I am so excited to read this, I love any kind of historical fiction, but I especially love any historical fiction that has to do with World War II. I wouldn't say I'm like a history buff, I'm not like super knowledgeable, but my dad growing up was really into World War II. He was first generation American. My grandmother was from Germany. She met my grandfather, who was a US soldier and then ended up moving to the States, but they were like born in Germany, like the whole thing. So we have family there, all of that. So like the history is a little bit different, like what they learn in school and what we learned here in the US is a little bit different. So my dad was always talking about like World War II and like some of the stuff that happened because my grandmother was like 16 when World War II happened. So she remembers like the bombings on the town that she lived in, and you know, she would talk about it. So I have like a very kind of different view on, not different view, but like different perspective, I guess you can say, on World War II. Like I have like, you know, instead of just learning like US stuff, I learned from my grandma as well. So I do love historical fiction. And what this follows is a hotel that essentially the owner has to convince all of her staff to house Nazis and to serve Nazis and to be respectful to the Nazis that are staying there. And I just couldn't imagine, but I'm so excited to kind of read what this is about, because there's also a gentleman that is staying in the hotel who's trying to get military secrets and things like that. So it just seems very like, I don't know, just right up my alley. And I don't know what Maggie's kind of writing style is, but I know from reading, I read another one of her series as well, The Raven Boys, and I hope that it, you know, has a good kind of flow to it. I'm sort of nervous, but I'm also, I would think, the most excited about that one. And the next one I have here, I've read one other book by this author, and I can't remember if I loved it or not, but a ton of my friends love his work, and a ton of my friends have read this book and said that it is absolutely fantastic, albeit a little bit gut-wrenching. And it is Frederick Bachman's My Friends. This follows a girl who goes to this coastal town, and she sees a painting. I'm assuming it's kind of the painting, or similar to the painting that is expressed on the front of the book, but she sees this painting and she's like, I need to know the story. And it's these young adults that are like out on a pier, and she's like, I know there's a story behind it. And from what I've heard though, like there are accounts of the friendship between those characters that are in the painting, and it is like very gut-wrenching. Like from what I've heard, this is not like in a Frederick Bachman kind of way. It's brutal and hard to read, and some of the stories, like the characters really suffer throughout the story, but it's also a story of like finding people that help you become who you want to be, and about love and loss and like overcoming things. And I don't know if my heart's ready to be as devastated as I think it's going to be in reading this, but I had to pick that one up. It just seems like something that at some point in my life I'm going to love to read. And the last book that I picked up, I had to get it. Don't ask me why. I think there might actually be something wrong with me, but it's Never Flinch by Stephen King. The reason why I say there might be something wrong with me, there will be a reading vlog dedicated to this book, and the reason for that is Stephen King and I have quite the tumultuous relationship. I have a Stephen King tattoo on my arm. That's how much I love him, or at least how much I used to love him. Some of his newer stuff doesn't necessarily sit with me the best. The reason why I picked up this one is there is a character named Holly Gibney who is a character from the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, and I love her. She's so raw, so real, so like in my mind, like I just picture her, and sometimes when I read other stories I picture her as the character. It's very weird. But this follows a character who basically reaches out to the authorities and is like, hey, I'm gonna kill 13 people and one innocent person, because he basically believes that people who allow, like good people that allow bad things to happen, are just as guilty as the person who commits a crime. And then at the same time we have a feminist like leader. She is like a public speaker, things like that, and that's who Holly's kind of protecting in the story, who has like a stalker. So it just seems very, if you've read anything by King, like he does his like monster horrors, and then he has these like sort of psychological horrors, and some of those are my favorite. So I'm hoping I like this one, but if I don't like this, this is the last new Stephen King I'm gonna read. There's just something about the way that he writes now that I'll kind of go into it in that vlog a little bit more, but it just seems like he is changing. He is a human being. Like Rocco and I have had this conversation before, but there's just something about how he kind of like operates nowadays that sort of changes how he writes as well. So hopefully I like it, because I've just been, I don't know, I've just been really wanting to get into Stephen King again. Like he is my bread and butter. I've been reading him pretty much since I could read. One of the biggest books I ever read when I was much younger was The Green Mile, which I've said on this channel multiple times is not the book to let your elementary school student read, but my dad was a huge Stephen King fan. That's just like where I think a lot of my creativity and my understanding and, you know, all of that really comes from horror books and comes from Stephen King books. So hopefully I like this one. But those are the books that I picked up on my little book haul. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed kind of hanging out with me. I had a lot of fun. I was super nervous to film in public, but what are you gonna do? But yeah, thank you guys so much. If you guys are in the Columbus area and you haven't gone to that new Barnes & Noble, yes, it's in Dublin. Yes, it's right off of Sawmill. Yes, it's a bit of a fucking nightmare to get there, but I would recommend. But thank you guys for hanging out with me today. I love you so much, and I will see you in my next video.